chatbot.html. And we're going to go to the top of this file right here. So at the top, we have all of our CSS code. We're going to move this CSS code into app.css. So we'll select all of this CSS all the way to the bottom, and we're going to copy it and then open app.css. And we're going to remove this default CSS. So we'll remove this and then paste our CSS code and save. And now, how does the CSS code get loaded on the website? If we open app.jsx, notice at the top, we import /app.css. So / means the current folder. It means the folder that contains this file, which is the source folder. So it's going to start from source and look for a file called app.css, and it finds it here. And it will load all the CSS code in this file onto the website.
Work today is broken. Every day, people juggle so many different tools just to get work.
So you might be wondering, how can we import a CSS file like this? Doesn't import only work for JavaScript files? So this is actually a feature of Vite. Vite lets us import any type of file, like a CSS file or even an image file. Depending on the type of file, it will behave differently. If we import a CSS file, Vite will load all the CSS code in this file and apply it to the website. So that's how this works. We use Vite to load the CSS code inside app.css. And this allows us to separate our CSS code into its own file to make our code more organized. Next, you'll also notice that in here, we have an index.css file. This CSS file is loaded by main.jsx here using this import. So why do we have two CSS files? A best practice is to split up our CSS into different files. All the CSS for the app component go inside the app.css file. All the CSS for the overall website should go inside index.css. If we open app.css and we scroll to the top, the body styles here are not related to the app component. This styles the overall website. So a best practice is to split up this code and move this into index.css. So we'll select this code and then cut and save. We'll split up the CSS. All the CSS for the app component go inside the app.css file. All the CSS for the overall website should go inside index.css. If we open app.css and we scroll to the top, the body styles here are not related to the app component. This styles the overall website. So a best practice is to split up this code and move this into index.css. So we'll select this code and then cut and save. And then inside index.css, we're going to remove this default code and paste those body styles and save. If we go back to app.css, the rest of this code is related to the app component. So it makes sense to leave it in app.css. And now we moved all of our CSS into our new React setup. So let's open our project again in the browser to see what it looks like. And now it's looking pretty good. It's looking like our previous chatbot project. and we have the layout and styling that we need. The last thing we're missing here are the images. So we're going to move those next. Let's move the robot image and the user image into the new React setup. We'll go back to VS Code, and we're going to scroll down, and we're going to select the robot.png image. And we'll copy it by pressing Ctrl-C on Windows or Command-C on Mac. We'll copy it by pressing. Let's move the robot image and the user image into the new React setup. We'll go back to VS Code, and we're going to scroll down, and we're going to select PNG image. And we'll copy it by pressing Ctrl-C on Windows or Command-C on Mac. And let's scroll up, and we're going to put it inside the source/assets folder. So this is typically where we put our images. So let's click on this assets folder, and we're going to paste the image by pressing Ctrl-V on Windows or Command-V on Mac. And now we have the robot image in our new setup. Let's do the same for the user image. So we'll go down and select user.png, and we'll copy, and then select the assets folder, and we'll paste. And now we need to load these images into our app. Let's open app.jsx. And to load this image, we can actually just import it. So at the top, let's type import, and we'll give this image a name like robot profile image. And we'll import it from a string, and we're going to locate this image file. So inside here, we'll start by typing /, which means the current folder, or the folder that contains app.jsx, which is the source folder. So we're going to start from the source folder, and then we're going to go into the assets folder. So we'll type assets, and to go into this folder, we're going to type a /. And then we're going to look for the file robot.png. So we'll type robot.png. So this is a file path. It tells the computer how to locate this file. So also notice that in this import, we just gave it a name instead of using curly brackets. This is called a default export, and we'll review this later in the lesson. But for now, just remember that when we import an image, we just give it a name without curly brackets. Let's also load the user image. So we're going to import and give it a name, user profile image, and we'll import it from a string, and we're going to locate the user.png file. So we'll start from the current folder using /. We'll look for the assets folder, and then / to go into this folder, and we'll look for the file user.png.
You, just you, building your app on base 44. Describe it. And it's real. One thought leads to more thoughts. Layer by layer, taking shape. When you need your tools.
So remember, this is a feature of Vite. Vite lets us import any type of file, including an image file. When we import an image like this, Vite gives us a file path to that image. So this contains a file path like this, and we can use this directly in an image's source attribute. So let's scroll down to the chat message component, and in here, we have our two image elements. So in the source attribute, instead of robot.png, we're going to give it those images that we imported by typing curly brackets. And here, for the robot, we'll insert the variable robot profile image. And we'll do the same thing for the user. We'll remove the source attribute and type curly brackets, and we'll insert the user profile image. So that's how we import images using Vite and use them. Now let's save, and we'll check our website. And now all of the images are loaded. So let's try adding a message to make sure this is working. We'll type the message hello and press send. And that's it. We finished moving our chatbot project into this new React setup. We'll go back to VS Code. And the big advantage of this setup is we can separate our code into different files instead of combining everything into one file like we had before. Right now, we already separated our code a bit. We separated the app component into app.jsx, and we separated the code that sets up React into main.jsx. Now, we're going to separate our code even more. So inside app.jsx, if we scroll to the top, notice that there's many other components in this file, like the chat input component. A best practice is to separate each component into its own file. This makes our code easier to work with because each file only focuses on one component. So let's separate the chat input component into its own file.
My husband used to ejaculate prematurely until this.
Okay, so my husband has this fun habit.
First, we're going to go to the source folder and we're going to create a new folder in here to group our components together. So we'll click this folder and we're going to click this icon to create a new folder. And we'll name it Components and press Enter. And inside this components folder, we're going to create a new file for our chat input component. So in here, we'll click it and then click this icon to create a new file. And we'll give it the same name as the component. So we'll name it capital C chat, capital I input .jsx and press enter. And now we're going to move the chat input component into this file. So we'll open app.jsx and we'll select the code for chat input, which is down here. And we're going to cut and then open chat input.jsx. And in here, we'll paste. And we'll scroll up and we're going to fix these ESLint, which is down here. And we're going to cut and then open chat input.jsx. And in here, we'll paste. And we'll scroll up and we're going to fix these ESLint errors. We'll start with this one. useState currently doesn't exist in this file, so we need to import it again. Let's go back to app.jsx, and at the top, let's copy this import. So we'll select it and copy, and we'll go to the chat input file, and at the top of this, we're going to paste the import. Now that we imported the useState, we're able to use it, and there's no longer an error. Now, ESLint also tells us that we're not using useRef or useEffect in this file, so we can remove these. Next, we're going to scroll down in this file, and we'll see that the chatbot object doesn't exist anymore in this file. So again, we'll go back to app.jsx, and let's move this import. So we'll select it, and chatbot is not used anymore in this file. So this time, we're going to cut. And inside chat input, at the top, we're going to paste that input. And now we have access to the chatbot. The last error here is that the chat input component is not being used. To fix this, we need to review a feature of JavaScript called modules. By default, any variables or functions that we create in a file only exist in that file. So chat input only exists in this file. It cannot be used outside this file. This helps us avoid naming conflicts, because if we use the same variable name in different files, it won't cause an error. Now, if we want to use this variable outside of this file, we need to export it first. To do that, in front of this function, we can just type export. And now this error is gone, because ESLint assumes that we're going to use this component outside of this file. So now let's save. And to use chat input in another file, we need to import it. So we'll open app.jsx. And at the top, we're going to import and type curly brackets. And in here, we'll import the chat input component. And we'll import it from a string. And we're going to locate the chat input file. At the front, we'll type // to start in the current folder, which is the source folder. And we're going to locate the chat input file. At the front, we'll type / to start in the current folder, which is the source folder. And then we're going to go to the components folder. And we'll type a / to go into this folder, and we'll locate the file chat input.jsx. By the way, when importing a JavaScript file or a JSX file, if we're using Vite, we don't have to add .js or .jsx at the end. Vite will actually add this automatically. So as a shortcut, we can remove this. Also, a common practice is to import from packages at the top, and then JavaScript files, and then other types of files. Packages. Also, a common practice is to import from packages at the top, and then JavaScript files and then other types of files. So now we learn how to create these imports ourselves using the JavaScript modules feature and the word export. And we can use chat input in this file.
I haven't been to the grocery store in over a year, but I'm eating healthier than ever. Here's how I did it. Meal planning used to be such a nightmare. The endless grocery lists, finding nutritious recipes, and figuring out what to.
Next, let's move the rest of these components into separate files. First, we'll move the chat message component. In the components folder, we'll click it, and we'll click this icon to create a new file. And let's name it the same as the component, capital C chat, capital M message, .jsx, and press enter. And now we're going to move the code over. So we'll open app.jsx, and we'll select this component, and cut, and then inside chat message.jsx, we're going to paste the component. And again, we'll scroll up and fix the ESLint errors. So first, it's telling us we're not using this component in this file. To fix this, at the front, we're going to export this component so it can be used in other files. If we scroll down, ESLint tells us that these images are missing. So we need to move those imports into this file. We'll go back to app.jsx, and at the So we'll open app.jsx, and we'll select this component, and cut, and then inside chat message.jsx, we're going to paste the component. And again, we'll scroll up and fix the ESLint errors. So first, it's telling us we're not using this component in this file. To fix this, at the front, we're going to export this component so it can be used in other files. If we scroll down, ESLint tells us that these images are missing. So we need to move those imports into this file. We'll go back to app.jsx, and at the top, we're going to select these two image imports, and we're going to cut. And inside chat message.jsx, we're going to scroll to the top and paste. Now, one thing we need to be careful about is that we may need to update these file paths. So now, this file is inside the components folder. That means / is going to start at the components folder. It's not going to be able to find the assets folder anymore. To fix this, at the front, we're going to use .. So just like in the command line, .. represents the outer folder. This means it's going to go out of this components folder and into the source folder. And then it's going to look for the assets folder. It's going to find it, and it will go into the assets folder and find robot.png. And we need to make the same change for the user image. At the front, we'll use .. to go out of the components folder into source, and then we can locate the assets folder. And now these imports will work correctly, and we finished moving the chat message component into its own file. Let's save, and we'll go back to app.jsx, and we'll move the chat messages component into its own file. Inside the components folder, we'll click it. We'll click this icon to create a new file. And let's name it the same as the component, capital C chat, capital M messages, .jsx, and press enter. We'll go back to app.jsx, and we'll select the code for this component, which is till here. And we're going to cut. And inside chat messages, we're going to paste. Let's scroll to the top. And this component needs useRef and useEffect. So let's move those imports into this file. We'll go to app.jsx. We'll select this import at the top and copy. And in chat messages, at the top, we're going to paste that import. And in this component, we do not use state, so we can remove it. Let's scroll down. And in this component, we also use the chat message component. So let's import that. We'll scroll up, and at the top, we'll import curly brackets, the chat message component from a string, and we'll locate this file using /. So it starts in the current folder, which is the components folder, and we'll look for the file chat message. And remember, we don't have to add .jsx at the end. Vite can automatically add it. Finally, ESLint tells us this component is not used in this file, so we need to export it. However, we're going to do something different this time. Instead of typing export at the front of this function, we're going to scroll down to the bottom. And at the end, we're going to type export default, and then what we want to export, which is the chat messages component. As a review, this is called a default export. It's useful if we want to export one thing from a file.
Making how-to videos used to take me hours. I'd record, mess up, start over, and edit forever until I finally said enough.
So now let's save. And to import this, we're going to go to app.jsx. And at the top, we're going to import. And for a default export, we can just type a name without curly brackets. So we can type chat messages. We'll import it from a string, and we'll type / to start in the current folder. So for this file, we're in the source folder, and then we're going to go into the components folder. Components / and locate chat messages. So this imports whatever the default export is from this file and names it chat messages. And then we're going to go into the component from a file, chat messages component. As a review, this is called a default export. It's useful if we want to export one thing from a file. So now let's save. And to import this, we're going to go to app.jsx. And at the top, we're going to import. And for a default export, we can just type a name without curly brackets. So we can type chat messages. We'll import it from a string, and we'll type / to start in the current folder. So for this file, we're in the source folder, and then we're going to go into the components folder. Components / and locate chat messages. So this imports whatever the default export is from this file and names it chat message. And at the top, we're going to import. And for a default export, we can just type a name without curly brackets. So we can type chat messages. We'll import it from a string, and we'll type / to start in the current folder. So for this file, we're in the source folder, and then we're going to go into the components folder. Components / and locate chat messages. So this imports whatever the default export is from this file and names it chat messages. This feature is called a default export. When we import and we use curly brackets like up here, this is called a named export. So some people like using default exports because it encourages each file to focus on one thing. However, it's up to you which style of export you want to use. You'll also find that some packages use named exports, while other packages use default exports. So this is just a review of JavaScript modules. If you want to learn about modules in more detail, you can check out my JavaScript full course in the video description. Next, let's fix these last few errors. So we're not using useRef or useEffect in this file anymore, so we can remove these. And finally, this app component is already in a file called app.jsx, so we can just leave it in this file. And usually, we put the app component outside of the components folder, because app represents the entire application. It's sort of the most outer component of our application. We put the app, and finally, this app component is already in a file called app.jsx, so we can just leave it in this file. And usually, we put the app component outside of the components folder, because app represents the entire application. It's sort of the most outer component of our application, so it makes sense to put it in the outer folder. So now let's save this file, and let's make sure that all these other files are saved. And now we'll open our website in the browser and try it out. And it looks pretty good. Let's refresh just to be safe, and we'll give it a try. We'll click this text box and type the message, hello, and press send. So it's working correctly, just like before. So we'll go back, and now we separated each component into its own file. And this makes our code easier to work with, because each file only focuses on one component, and each file contains less code. The last thing we're going to do in this lesson is to separate the CSS into different files. So let's open app.css. And you'll notice that in here, it contains CSS for multiple components. So we're also going to separate the CSS so that each component has its own CSS file. For example, this CSS code is related to the chat input component. So we'll go to the components folder and click it, and we'll click up here to create a new file. And we're going to name it the same as the component, capital C chat, capital I input, .css, and press enter. And we'll move all the CSS related to the chat input component in here. So in app.css, we'll select this code for the send button, the chat input, and the chat input container. And we'll cut. And inside chat input.css, we're going to paste that code and save. And now to load this CSS code, we're going to open chat input.jsx. And at the top, we're going to import a string and the CSS file we want to load, which is this one. So we'll type // to start in the current folder, which is components, and we'll load chat input.css and save. As a review, this is a feature of Vite. If we import a CSS file, it will load all the CSS in the file and apply it to the website. Next, let's go back to app.css. And these styles are for the app component. So it actually makes sense to leave them inside the app.css file. Below this, these styles are for the chat message component. So let's create a CSS file for the chat message component. We'll go into the components folder and click here to create a new file. And we'll name this chat message.css and press enter. And we'll go back to app.css. And we're going to select the styles for the chat message user, the chat message robot, the text, as well as the chat message profile. And cut. And then inside chat message.css, we're going to paste the CSS code and save. And we're going to load this by going into chat message.jsx. And at the top, we're going to import a string, and we'll import this file using / chat message.css and save.
Websites your competitors don't want you to know, part 2. All you do is go to this website, and it lets you find out exactly how much your competitors are making by showing you how much traffic they're getting, where the traffic's coming from, and even which social media platform is driving the most visits. It has a complete breakdown of all the recent ads they've been running, what type of keywords they rank for, and even the top competitors in their space. If you want to see how they stack up against their competitors, all you do is add them here. And it breaks down all their traffic and engagement benchmarked against each other. And their new feature, which is a game changer, is called AI brand visibility. All you do is enter your website. Then it tells you exactly how AI's...
We'll go back to app.css. Finally, these styles are for the chat messages component. First, we'll create a CSS file for this component. So we'll click this folder and click here to create a new file, and we'll name it chat messages.css and press enter. And in app.css, we're going to select this code and cut. And in chat messages.css, we're going to paste and save. And we'll load this by opening chat messages.jsx. And at the top, we will import a string, and we'll locate the file /chat messages.css and save. And finally, we'll go back to app.css and make sure that we save all of our files. Now let's open our website in the browser. And everything should look and work correctly. Let's go back to our code. And that's it. We split up our JavaScript and our CSS code into separate files. And now each component has its own JavaScript file and its own CSS file. This makes our code a lot easier to work with because each file is focused on only one component, and each file contains less code. In the next lesson, we'll use this new React setup to work on a bigger React project, which is an e-commerce website that has multiple pages and more advanced features. And that's the end of this lesson. In this lesson, we created a proper React setup using the command line npm and Vite. We reviewed the command line, which lets us give commands to our computer. We reviewed npm, which helps us download and use external libraries or packages. We learned the create Vite package, which helps us create a proper React setup. We moved our chatbot project into the new React setup. We learned how to use ESLint, which highlights problems in our JavaScript code. We reviewed JavaScript modules, which lets us separate our code into different files. And we separated each component in the chatbot project into its own JavaScript and CSS files. Thanks for watching so far. If you find this course valuable, and CSS files. Thanks for watching so far. If you find this course valuable, you can support the channel by liking this video, leaving a comment, and subscribing. You can also check out the premium version of this course, where you'll get all the lessons ads-free, broken down into small videos, as well as additional lessons and more projects that are not in the public React course. Currently, the premium course contains 11 lessons, and I'll be adding more lessons in the future. You can also get a certificate of completion, create comments or questions on specific topics, get progress tracking, search, and course notes. You can also check out the membership, where you can get this course ads-free, separated by each lesson, AI videos, backend tutorials, and more. Thanks again, and let's continue with the course. Here are some exercises to help you practice what we learned in this lesson.